Hey everyone, I've been really enjoying Deadlock and specifically the Deadlock Fight Night weekly King of the Hill tournament that's been going on, and I wanted to make a quick video breaking down why the two-time European champs DMS have been a bunch of fun for me to watch. For those that don't know, I'm Myrick, formerly Dream, and I coached in the Overwatch League as well as Cloud9 White Valorant. But when I've been watching this team, DMS, the thing that I've noticed the most that really stands out to me is how good they are at understanding their comp's win conditions versus the enemy comp and playing around space, like choosing where they want to fight and taking good advantage of their abilities in certain areas of the map. They draft really heavily for Teamfight and Teamfight power. As you can see in this draft, which is from game 1 of week 4, which was the first week that they won, we have Kelvin Dome, great zone tool. We have Viscous Goo Ball, great zone tool. We have Yamato, who can ult and dive the enemy backline, especially with Refresher here for zoning. And we have Pocket Affliction, which is the biggest key that we'll see in this first series. Really makes a giant difference for the team. But they create this insane amount of space and put so much pressure on your backline while their backline remains pretty safe and gets to just pump out tons of damage. So that's kind of how they've been playing in all 4 of the maps that we're going to look at. They really play that way. And in this first series, they're up against Pogilaya Scumbria. Hope I'm saying that correctly. And both games, PS plays a pick style comp. In this game, their big pick tools are the Wraith, the Mo, and the McGinnis Wall. They've got some late game insurance with the Refresher, Kudzu, Ivy, and the 7. But really, they're going to be based around getting picks with these CC ultimates, right? Whether that's early game, getting picks at the start of the fight, or baiting the engage onto themselves and then turning on one target and blowing them up. But they really need that single target one shot at some point in the fight versus what we've got from DMS. They really are just looking for a longer fight, a fight they can split up and play to their advantage. So here we are at about 17 and a half minutes into the game. The reason we're not starting at 15 minutes is because there was actually an odd bug this game where there were 2 urns at once. So I'd rather talk about this fight, which is very consequential and is a very common situation to end up in, which is when one team is trying to brute force a mid lane, so green or blue lane walker. These are very dangerous areas to engage. If you don't have the right tools, you don't have an advantage or good information. This is one of the scariest areas of the map to be in when the enemy engages on you, and that is why we see DMS looking for an engage here. And just to reiterate the win conditions one more time, PS here is a pick comp. They want to use things like the Wraith ult, the Mo ult, and the McGinnis Wall to single people out and to blow them up before save options like the Cube and the Rescue Beam can come out to save whoever is the target of that pickoff attempt. So as we watch this play out, we are going to see that Wolfie has a fully maxed ultimate as well as Kevlar. So he is really ready to go for this fight, and that's why we see him engaging while Viscous is coming in from the flank with his ult. Mo tries to zone him off by ulting. Meanwhile, Pocket gets tons and tons of space in the backline, forces all the attention on him, and is able to safely get Rescue beamed out. So at this point, this is a awful situation for PS to be in. They don't have any of their pick tools left except for Wall. There is a Viscous in their backline, and no one is really under any threat on DMS. So they are in a perfect position to keep drawing out this long fight now that all of the big cooldowns and pick tools have been blown by PS. So as we see this fight continue to play out, Viscous in the backline getting tons of value, 7 sort of off to the side, the Wall finally comes out, is not able to single anyone out, and now 7 is sort of the sole target, while Viscous is getting 3 or 4 or 5 people all looking at Viscous. So 7 gets focused down. And we still have, very importantly, the Yamato ult, and then we're about to see the Kelvin Dome. to allow this long fight to keep going, and this backline no longer has any tools left to deal with this Yamato. There's just no tools left. She's just free reign, doing whatever she wants, and there's just going to be cleanup here. Mo's going to end up dying as well. This is just a very decisive fight that we see from DMS, and again, they're playing very well around their win conditions. They get huge value out of all of their big cooldowns, whereas PS is on the back foot the entire fight and doesn't really have any way to get into the fight at all once that Wraith ult and that Mo ult get countered, and they're just kiting back the whole time. So this is really the first clear example of DMS just executing better on their win conditions than PS is able to. Okay, and now we're sitting at the 20-minute mark. We've got both teams lining up for a fight for bridge buffs. I'm really not sure why PS wants to force a big fight right now, considering they're down 20k. I don't think it's worth it. They should probably be looking for trades, but they are looking to contest. And what we're going to see here is some good stalling early on from the Gubal and the Yamato ult. But PS does a great job of surviving that. So let's go ahead and play this out. I'll speed it up a little bit. We see the engage come out from Yamato. She ults and the Viscous ult comes in. And they're both just going in. No real consequences to them now. But they don't get any value out of it. And that Ivy ult has come out and zoned their engage. So a great play from Ivy to not allow this follow-up. It wasn't the best engage from DMS, but a good counter ult to stop that. And then what we're about to see is that PS is like, okay, we survived two of their most important stalling, sort of take all of our backline's attention abilities. Let's see if this is going to be our opportunity to get a pick. But the problem is Kelvin still has everything up. So we see the Wraith come in, but her ult gets stopped by the Kelvin Dome. Well, it gets interrupted, all the pushing. And then the Mo and Krill ult comes out, but there's still a cube and a rescue beam. So these picks were not able to materialize. We see the long fight again looking favored for PS, or DMS rather, I'm sorry. Especially when you look at Pocket in the backline here, getting a giant ult, bursting everyone. It's just absolutely huge. And it's a wrap on this fight. There's not really anything else to say about it. So again, what we saw here was DMS's ability to win out on ability trades back and forth, live through picks, not use important cooldowns early, not get nervous, not overinvest, just do only what's needed to counter the pick play, and then re-engage, and got huge value from Wolfie in the backline there. So another big decisive fight from them here at the 20-minute mark. And now we're at the last real fight of the game. It's at 32 minutes, looking for this urn turn in, and we see some hiding players here. The Yamato in the pocket from DMS are hiding, and meanwhile PS is sort of hunting them, wants to use one of their curses here on the Mo or the Geist to get a pick on some of these hiding players. Meanwhile, this Kelvin Hapix is hiding, waiting to be able to save them if needed. Viscous also in a decent position to cube if needed. But it's important that we've got the back line safely here and the front line spread out strategically here for DMS. And PS is going to have to find a way to push in and take all of this space back. And what we're going to see is that the Mo and the Wraith want to push out of here. They see the pocket, so they're going to go pressure the pocket. Geist gets the curse on him, but he's able to get out and get Rescue Beam to safety before that wall can come out. And Great Talent probably gets a little too aggressive here because we are very close to him getting picked, but there's a little bit of a flub here. The Mo is not able to get the combo off. I think that regardless, this Mo would not be able to kill Great Talent by himself. The Viscous is coming with Ball to interrupt the combo. Maybe the Kelvin needs to dome, but regardless, this guy's not getting any kills. And we see over here, we've got a Yamato that is not going to die, has ult, so even if it takes them longer to deal with the Mo, if he didn't mess up and die, I don't really think it matters. And then we see the Viscous gets free reign in backline, so he's gonna do whatever he wants. Then Kelvin comes in with Dome, and puts a lot of pressure on the Wraith. Oh, here's the Dome on Geistrather. And then Pocket eats the Wraith ult, and then gets a giant ult right after with his Warp Stone, which we're going to see again him getting value out of. Another big ult. And that's basically the game. There's nothing that can be done to turn this. They can just push in and end the game off this. So just looking at this first game, what do we see? We see a lot of fights where there's tons and tons of zone control from the Goo Ball, from the Yamato ult, particularly when she has Refresher to just stay alive for 10 years, and the Pockets Affliction plus Ethereal Shift plus Briefcase. Just so much zone control, so much backline pressure. Meanwhile, the Kelvin can just sustain in the long fight. These two can just pump out constant DPS. They have Cube if they need it. Just very, very strong execution on this team fight. Sort of, I dive your backline, you can't dive my backline type of comp from DMS. Moving into game 2, again versus PS, and as we can see, very, very similar comps. The big changes on PS, instead of Wraith and Mo, they have Paradox and Lash. Otherwise, a very similar comp, not the exact same, but it functions very similarly. Still really wants to generate picks with the Paradox, the Lash, and the McGinnis, and then they sort of have late game insurance with the Seven and the Infernus. And then we go to DMS, and look, we have these same 4 characters. We have Viscous to make space, Pocket and Yamato to make space, and then we have Great Talon to benefit off that. We also, instead of Mirage, we have Haze as one of the carries to benefit from that space. And we do not have the Kelvin. Instead, we have the Ivy here for Hapix. So we won't have that Dome, but he will have that big AoE ultimate that you can use to split the fight up, which we saw pretty successfully happen a few times last game from PS. But again, both teams very similar comps and very similar goals when they want to execute team fights. Okay, here we're at the 25-minute mark, and this is very similar to one of the fights we saw last game where we're setting up for a bridge buff fight, and you're actually going to see Great Talon get pretty aggressive in this fight, which we saw him do last game. This time he gets punished much harder for it. And we're also going to see quite a juke from Infernus that allows him to stay alive, that it might be the big difference maker in this fight. Again, let's look for those big space-creating ults from DMS and the pick opportunities from PS. Let's look for those. So as we see, Yamato is getting pressured a little bit by the Infernus, looking for space. Same thing we saw last time when they were fighting here. Yamato going up first, making space with ultimate. You see that happening. Here we have a bird come out to assist. We see Pocket chase as well, and we have the Viscous Goo Ball. Okay, so a lot of investment, a lot of time and space going into this. So let's just look at this from Pocket's POV, trying to catch this Infernus. Okay, and let's watch what happens with this juke. He's going, he really wants to get this guy. He doesn't want to use his blink. He doesn't want to use a bunch of stamina. He wants to be able to use those things to help with his ult execution. So here we go. He's like, oh, I'm on this Infernus. Where did he go, bro? And then finally Pocket gets in. Finally he can use a late ult. But it's not enough. So many people are already dead. And even though he gets a kill and actually gets out here, again, a testament to how good Wolfie is at this character. And a clever little escape that we see here. It's not enough. So let's back up. And now that we know why their dive didn't work, let's look at why their backline did not stay alive. And so we'll go through here. We see the start of the fight. Then he uses the bird. And he's trying to play in this fight aggressively here. Playing forward. He gets lit on fire by the Infernus. And then he has to get zoned out. But Lash is still hunting him. And he's one shot. Okay. So Infernus really makes a hyper play this fight. The fact that he's able to live so long, juke around, climb up onto the high ground, and set the Great Talon on fire, and then run away and continue to waste time is actually so insane in this fight. But overall, again, they're able to get this pick on the backline with the Lash. They're not able to keep the Great Talon safe, and they're not able to do enough actual disruption. They're just chasing the Infernus around, but they're not stopping anyone else on the team from doing their job. So that's why we see this fight play out so convincingly for PS, even though they don't have a huge lead at this point. They're still able to pull it out. So we're at about the 28.5-minute mark. And in this fight, there's a siege from PS on DMS's base. And at the start of this fight, it is a 6v5 in PS's favor. And they get a Paradox swap onto the Great Talon. And they are still not able to win this fight. And a huge part of that is the pocket, Wolfie and his Affliction play that we'll see. But first, let's start out and take a look at the swap that happens. Okay, they mistime the rescue beam, so you always get swapped at the end of the swap. So the rescue beam was a little too early, but he has the ethereal shift, gets cubed, so he's fine. He's gonna live. And now let's watch Wolfie's counter engage here. And again, Hayes is still not with them. Look at this. Hayes is not here, okay? But Wolfie sees his angle, hears the Lash ult get missed, and decides this is his time. Blink in, gets the ult off onto 6 people, dies immediately because he gets silenced right after, but he gets the ult off onto 5 people. That is just a wrap. There's nothing you can do. So the bird goes in, the Viscus goes in, the Yamato goes in. It's over. You get an Affliction like that, and you're winning the fight. It does not matter, bro. So they are just going absolutely ham on this. Yamato diving backline with that Affliction. Just doing whatever she wants, to the point that the Haze even has time to join this fight and help get cleanup. Yamato stalling as long as possible, but still getting 3 people looking at her for, you know, a year. And then Hage tries to chase people down, not able to close out kills with ult. But again, this is just another example of when you're grouped up, these areas that are scary to get engaged on, especially from a big Affliction. And yeah, as we can see over here, the Haze tries to get ult value, not able to find anything because of the metal skin. But still, a winning fight for DMS despite starting it a man down. So huge. And again, we see all this value from the Affliction and the goo ball in the back line, and making so much space for the Yamato, for the Great Talon, for the Haze. Okay, so here we're at the last decisive fight of the game. It's around the urn turn-in, and we see here that a pick attempt is coming on the Yamato, okay? And Great Talon is nearby as well, but a lot of DMS is not here, so the Yamato uses her ult early to survive, okay? A wall comes up, Great Talon flies over it, and then he gets Lash ulted, again with a slightly mistimed rescue beam, so he still gets pulled in, and he has to use the ethereal shift to try and survive. And this time he's not going to get cubed to live like he did last fight. So it's not a good start for DMS. But if we look at what Wolfie is doing, it's going to be another situation where it just doesn't matter because of this Affliction value that he gets. Look at this. Goes in backline, gets cubed, gets an absolutely insane ultimate, is making tons of space, stays alive with ethereal shift as well. And now the Great Talon is dead, and that is usually who you're making all this space for. But the Haze is now officially online. It is late enough in the game. She has quite a few items. She is very scary, and you're going to see her clean this up. As soon as Infernus's metal skin runs out, she pops ult, and everyone just gets cleaned up. That's the end. And that's the end of PS in this series. So going into week 5, DMS is playing against Buff Enjoyers. You may be familiar with Buff Enjoyers. They've been one of the best teams in EU for a while now, have some very well-known names on the team. And they did not want to deal with Wolfie's Pocket. So in game 1, they banned Pocket. And I think that's a great idea. Looking at last week's, or week 4 rather's matches, I would not want to play against Wolfie's Pocket either. So they ban it and leave Wraith up. Now, what DMS could do here is go full on into a pick comp. They do not do that. They do have Wraith. They do use Wraith in the mid game for picks. But overall, we see a very similar comp, right? We see Wraith, which is going to help us get picks and make space. We have Kelvin Dome. We have Yamato Dive. And we have Abrams. Abrams is incredible at making space, at soaking up cooldowns, at forcing you to look at him, especially if he can get a pin. And they have Prestis, who was previously playing Great Talon. That's been taken away as well. So he's sitting in the back line on Lady Geist instead. And Wolfie, instead of playing the Pocket, is just going to farm insanely fast on the 7. Now, if we can look at the graphs here, we can see that it's very, very close for the majority of the game, and then things start to change around the 25-minute mark. Now, on broadcast, the majority of what was discussed was Play With Me's Wraith, okay? And what we saw was the early Shadow Weave, allowing a lot of gank potential, but then Listic with the Ethereal Shift, as well as a debuff reducer. Zergy also with the Ethereal Shift. Mikhail, even though he has Tornado, also went Ethereal Shift. And, you know, we have Stone Form from Ivy. We have Cube from Shriek. So there's so many ways to try and survive this Wraith gank. So then she also goes Curse. So the combination of Curse and Shadow Weave and the Diviner's Kevlar makes it very easy to get these picks. The superior duration helps deal with the debuff reducer. But that was the big topic and the main focus of the broadcast, which I think is fine. But I want to talk about the decisive thing that happens around 29 minutes, which to me is kind of when I was like, okay, this game is actually over. So I want to focus on the fight that actually happened, again, without Play With Me there. Similarly to what we saw last game, where Play With Me was splitting on the Haze, and the team saw an angle and took a fight, and then he was able to show up at the very end and do something, even though they had already basically won the fight without him. That's exactly what happens here. So let's take a look. Okay, we're just before 29 minutes, and just really quick to talk about Buff Enjoyer's comp. It is not dissimilar at all to the comps we saw from a DMS last week, right? They have a lot of space making in the Viscous, in the potential Ivy ult, and importantly, the Warden. The Warden ult is a very good spacing tool, a very good zone control tool that functions similar to the Yamato in Hurl, right? You don't want to just sit there and fight the Warden. You kind of have to run away. It's the same idea. And then they have the Great Talon and the Mirage in the back to do damage. So very similar to the comp that we saw from DMS in game 1, right? So very, very similar here. Now, what we're seeing right now is DMS going for an Urn Turn-In. We see a bird coming in to interrupt it. And this is going to be the decisive fight that changes everything. There are going to be 3 things to talk about. One is a Kelvin Dome that negates a lot of the space control and also really kind of owns Shriek on a sliver. But he gets very, very unlucky this fight. And then the tale of 2 backlines. DMS's backline being able to survive when the enemy dives them. Meanwhile, Yamato with Refresher being able to get value in the enemy backline by herself. So really quick, I'm just going to hop onto Sharik, and you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. So he's used his goo ball to try and get to this fight as fast as possible. And as you can see, we have a lot of action going on. Ivy has ulted. Warden is channeling ult in their face, ready to fight, okay? And everything is about to pop off right around this urn. And if we go back to Sharik, you'll see here that the second he's about to get there, that dome blocks him off. If he was able to get inside with this, even though his ult is about to run out, he would have been able to do a lot, I think, to assist Dimov here. In the end, what happens is he's just waiting here for this dome to go down. Eventually, it does. He's pressuring, and then Abrams out of nowhere ults him, pins him, punches him. He tries to run, blinks away. Abrams blinks after him, and it's a rip in peace. I really don't know what Sharik can do to play that fight any better. It really is just on the absolute margins. But that Kelvin Dome, just totally shutting down both the Viscous and the Warden's ability to make any space, right? Hugely consequential, this Kelvin Dome out of Hapex. Even though he does end up dying to Listic. Listic's flying over the dome. As soon as the dome ends, he's able to kill the Kelvin. But the other thing we need to look at is what the Yamato's up to. So this goes down. Yamato ults and says, I can chase this. I can chase this backline. I can kill this Warden. I can pop Refresher and stay alive for another 10 to 15 seconds, putting out damage. I can make this very difficult for them to deal with. Finally goes down. Okay? So makes a ton of space and gets the kill. And again, I just want to stress this. Play With Me is taking walkers. He takes 2 walkers during this fight. He's like straight. This is a full-on 5v6. He's taking 2 walkers instead of showing up to this urn fight. Okay? This is crazy. And then I want to back it up one more time, and we're going to watch Prestus. Okay? And see what's happening here. So let's back it up and watch this from Prestus' point of view. Again, the dome ends. Kelvin's dead. He's playing backline. And what does he hear? He hears his 7, who I assume he hears his 7. They actually said that 7, that Wolfie isn't always in voice chat with them. But he's running back here to help deal with this Infernus. And Infernus is pressuring by himself. Maybe if Mikhail had been able to get there with him, or Sharik was alive, or was still alive, I mean, he's dying right now, or Listic had line of sight, maybe this goes very differently. But that's not the case. Now, Zergy is able to go 1-for-1 here. And this is where it gets really important. This 1v1 that we see right here is extremely consequential to how this game ends. Like, look how tight the Soul lead is right now. 5k at 30 minutes. That is meaningless. Fight execution matters, 100 times more than that 5k. And here we go. Mikhail finally has gotten to the back line. And we see not a lot of options here available. But just straight up fighting, gets in his face with the siphon. Again, just playing life, return fire, slowing hex so you can't use your tornado. And then, guess who finally got here? Pushed the walkers, took the TP, has now shown up to the fight. Helps finish off Mirage. And then also comes to finish off Listic here on the Grey Talon. So, really, this game was dead even. Could come down to anyone. And DMS wins a very ballsy 5v6 while taking 2 walkers. And the game is just totally blown open at this point. But you really can say that Kelvin Dome that made it impossible for Sharik to do anything and totally canceled out the Warden ult might be the biggest play of the game. And it shows these zone control abilities and how consequential they are. I don't want to sleep on Prestige and him winning those backline fights. I think that's really important as well. But the entire flow of the fight was totally broken by that huge Kelvin Dome. So taking a look at Game 2 versus Buff Enjoyers, we saw a slight change in strategy from Buff Enjoyers, deciding not to ban the pocket and to pick it away instead. But other than that, both teams running very similar comps to what we would expect from them. Buff Enjoyers running the Mirage again, running the Warden again, even though it's Sharik this time. And basically a lot of space control, just like the Affliction and the Warden, the Last Stand are space control. And we've got Mikhail S to be able to play backline Mirage, Listic to be sort of flexible back and forth, Piggy for zone control. So again, a good teamfight comp with a little bit of split push option from the Mirage. Same thing we saw last game from them, just with the pocket slotted in. And then here on the other side of things, we have DMS, who is again running things we're very familiar with, but instead of having 4 really heavy zoning characters, they just have 3. They have the Kelvin, the Viscous, and the Abrams, with sort of 3 carries that are strong at different phases of the game. But again, very similar comp, very similar objectives. However, when we look at the Souls graph, not very similar. Now, the reason for this is that at the 10-minute fight for the bridge buffs, DMS wins both skirmishes on both sides of the map, and sort of that kind of blows them to a very early lead, and they don't really make any big mistakes and don't give Buff Enjoyers a good way back into the game. Now, what I want to talk about is how they can do that. There are some opportunities that Buff Enjoyers could have tried to take, and I want to look at how those get shut down, because DMS knows exactly what they're looking for and isn't going to let them have it. So we're at around the 23-minute mark. There's a couple dead on Buff Enjoyers that are about to respawn, and DMS knows that mid-boss is also about to respawn. They have the timer, and they are ready to burn it down instantly as soon as it spawns. Now, Buff Enjoyers is going to put up a great contest for this, and a lot of that is supposed to be based around this Affliction coming out from Demov, but look at how impossible it is to get pocket value here. The Mirage TP's on him, he drops into ult and gets silence glyphed during the short channel time of Affliction and gets the ult canceled. Okay, the dome comes out. They're not able to kill the pocket during the dome. Okay, so he's able to escape, and they sort of reset the fight. So not bad. Demov playing it well. Not much else he can do. And then here on the recontest, it actually is... the rejuve will be secured by BE, but the fight will be won by DMS. So let's take a look. Warden goes in. We've got some metal skin going in, and we've got the Ivy diving, a bunch of parries. It's just a total mess. But the fact is that the 7 ult with the Abrams running in and punching everyone, and the Hazel is just way too much damage. You're not going to win the fight. So they do get the rejuve to stop the creep buff from existing, but they just get hard wiped in the fight. And that's, you know, not good. Okay, and here we're at the super late game, about 39 minutes in, and Buff Enjoyers is looking to set up to try and force a mid-boss fight. Hayes is not here yet. They want to just try and force anything they can. They're down 50k. So this is a very difficult scenario for them. It would take absolutely immensely good execution to be able to win here. And I just, again, want to look at how hard it is for Demov to do his job. And this is not a criticism of Demov. Look at how hard they are hunting this pocket, okay? So first, Buff Enjoyers gets the boss down to half, and then they're trying to bait everyone to come in. So now they want to reset the fight, okay? And they're ready to commit onto this Abrams, but he gets rescue beamed out. Well played from DMS. Okay, so both teams kind of pushing and pulling, feeling each other out. And as soon as this pocket gets found. Look at this. They're silencing him. They're cursing him. They're chasing after him. He runs away into the veil and is barely able to get back out. But look at how hard they are diving onto this guy. They're like, we refuse to let this pocket get any value and get a big affliction on us. They make it so impossible for Dimov to do his job. Sort of the big takeaways that I have from watching DMS. They're an excellent, excellent team. It's so great to see this early in the game a team that understands how to play to their win conditions and execute on that consistently, and they also understand what the enemy's team win conditions are, and they know how to shut those down consistently. That is not an easy thing to do, especially so early in the game. So I'm excited to see if, even with this really, really big patch that just hit on Thursday that totally changes the economy, how soul distribution works, and I expect to have very large impacts on the meta. I'm excited to see how DMS adapts to that, and if they are able to defend their title again this week in the Deadlock Fight Night. I believe there's another one this week. Please, guys, show support to Deadlock Fight Night. We should be appreciative for any community tournaments that we're getting at this stage in the game, especially a regular weekly one that puts not a lot of cash, but a little cash in the players' pockets, show some appreciation to them. But also, what I really appreciate about Deadlock Fight Night is them keeping their matches public, not setting these matches to private, so we can get into these replays, we can look at the stats screen, we can learn what these players are doing, we can understand the game a lot better as fans, as enthusiasts. So I really appreciate that. Please show support to them. It's Deadlock Fight Night on Twitch and Deadlock FN on Twitter, and I will put that in the description as well. Please show them some love and check out the tournament. On Wednesday, there's an EU tournament and an NA tournament every week. So please show them some love, and if you guys like this content or you have other teams or other matches you want me to take a look at, please let me know. Thanks so much.